The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. My name is Adrian Benjamins, and I'm joined by Neil Rochlani. Neil, how are you?
Doing good, my man. How are you?
Good, man. This is
how's the heat down in Southern California? I know the last couple podcasts it's been burning up down
there. It's been crazy. You know, I feel lame complaining about it because there's people around the world that are dealing with real problems, and I listened back to some of those shows and I cringe because I'm complaining that I'm a little sweaty and it's hot. I can deal with the heat, man. Life is good. We got great weather here on the West Coast, and I can't complain, man. You're not going to hear a peep out of me. What about you? How's everything going over there?
Oh, everything is perfect. Actually, the Chicago summer has been fantastic. It's been like 80 degrees and just perfect every day.
Nice.
Can't complain at all.
So we are recording this show for Thursday or this, and you and I, we usually do Friday's show. I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so we had to move our day up. So, but I know you and Dan kind of got into that Kevin Love trade on the last show, and I think we needed to explore that a little bit more because I think there's a lot of varying opinions on what Kevin Love's value or what his outlook is going to be for this upcoming season, or maybe where he should be drafted this season. So, Neil, what the quick overview on the last show? What were you and Dan kind of talking about Kevin Love?
Oh yeah, just to quickly clarify, no trade, just the re-signing, right, in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, sorry, sorry, did I say
right.
trade?
You said trade, and I know it's just an innocuous thing, but I just wanted to clarify. Yeah, so obviously he was re-signed by Cleveland for 4 years, for $120 million, I believe, and seems to be their centerpiece going forward of that team. Seems incredibly happy to be there. It seems to be mutual. So Dan was talking about yesterday how Kevin Love back in the 2013-2014 season was 6th overall by averages, and I believe 4th overall by totals. And he is thinking he could do. And like when he was in Minnesota, he was the focal point of the offense, and will likely be so this year in Cleveland. With the only caveat being his injury risk going forward. But Dan had mentioned that he thought Kevin could do not those same stats, but perhaps 80 to 90% of them. And I was of the take that he's going to be more like 2/3 of what he was back then. It was 5 years ago. I don't know if he's going to have as much free reign in Cleveland as he did in Minnesota. And so I'm not sure how it's going to go. But I was looking at the numbers, and if he does 2/3 of what he did 5 years ago, which I still think might be tough to assume because 5 years is a long time. And I know Kevin Love has still put up good stats in the last couple of years, but I'm worried about his injury. And that was also a big caveat Dan had about his injury risk. But anyway, if he does 2/3 of what he did, I'm looking at the Basketball Monster, he would be the 17th player in last year's based on last year's numbers. So I'm going to value Kevin Love more like, because of the injury risk, probably like around, I had said 30 yesterday, and the more I think about it, it's probably going to be more like 20 to 22. But as you and Dan have talked about, you want to extract value, so you don't want to draft at that position. So I probably would not draft him until late 20s at the earliest. Probably not until like early 30s. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Things can change as we go into the offseason and the preseason and kind of see what the rotations might look like and how healthy he is and what that offense might be trying to do. So anyway, that's my quick take on it. And but like I said, these are always in flux. Do you have any thoughts on Kevin Love, or what are your thoughts about his ability this year?
I really like your take on Kevin Love, and I do agree with Dan man, that Minnesota Kevin Love was a monster. I mean, he was like a 2020 guy, monster rebounder, great scorer. The threes were there, but I think you're right to kind of. I mean, we're not going to see that. That was what 5 years ago, and I. One reason why I kind of fade away from Kevin Love is that he doesn't get those defensive stats. I really like my big men at the beginning of my draft to get blocks, and the blocks aren't there. And then I'm with you on the injury concern. We've seen Kevin Love have multiple hand injuries. We've seen him miss some large chunks of time, and I'm kind of worried that maybe as the lead focal point of an offense that he could get some wear and tear. And so I'm a little concerned definitely on the injury front. But I still really do like Kevin Love. The points is going to be great. The rebounds is going to be fantastic. Threes. But for me personally, I can't see myself taking him in the top 48, meaning he needs to go after the fourth round for me. And I'm not sure if he's going to last that long because I'll be honest with you, Neil. I like guys. I'll take Clint Capella over him. I'll take Marc Gasol over him. I'll take Joel Embiid, Draymond Green. I'm just looking right now at a list of I'm just looking at a list of last season's player rater. And, those are guys I'd rather have because I like those defensive stats. So for me, I do like Kevin Love. I think we're definitely going to see an upgraded Kevin Love from what we've got when he was next to LeBron. But we're not going to see the Minnesota T-Wolves Kevin Love. And I still just fading him a little bit just because I really need those blocks. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, that's one reason why I've stayed away from him. Because I don't start a lot of big men, and I want to do well in blocks. So, if a guy who's at that power forward position is not really blocking, I tend to stay away. But I want to clarify. I don't want to speak for Dan, but he didn't say he would get at those Minnesota numbers, but he could do a shade of those, like 80% of them. So that's kind of where his thoughts were, and he was saying that he could take him somewhere, I think, in the late 20s. But I'm correct. So he wasn't thinking he'd be a top, first round player. For me, if he dropped to the third round, I think I would, or if he dropped to around 30 something, I would take him. But you're even lower on him than me. So you don't even want to touch him in the first 48.
Yeah, I just see myself, in the fourth round. I think guys like Capella could be there. I don't know. Draymond Green should be gone by then. I guess Marc Gasol is likely going to be gone by then. But I'm trying to think who else would be in that range. Other big men, LaMarcus Aldridge. I guess I would definitely take Kevin Love over LaMarcus Aldridge. But I don't know.
What about Blake Griffin?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'd probably go Kevin Love there just because Blake Griffin also doesn't block a lot of shots. I think Kevin Love's going to get you more threes, and I think, Blake needs to share the ball a lot more than Kevin Love does. Blake's got high usage big men next to him in Andre Drummond, and he's got some other mouths to feed on that team. So I think Kevin Love's got a little more open space to work with on his own. So I would definitely lean Kevin Love there. But, I don't know, though. You know what? Reality-wise, though, it's a really great move. I like it a lot. And there were a lot of question marks with Kevin Love going into the season because we didn't know what was going to happen to him, right? We weren't really sure. Was he going to get traded? Was something going to happen? So I love just having the clarity on him now where, his role, check. His role's good. The usage, check, should be good. The minutes are there. So it's just for him all about being healthy. I think he can be a really high asset. So for me, I can definitely see why you'd want to take him third round or later, but for me, there's just some other bigs that give me blocks that I probably would target in the fourth round ahead of him. But hey, if he somehow slips past that fourth round, I would jump all over him. But he most likely will be gone. And let's see how much hype gains on him coming into our draft season as well. I mean, if he blows up in preseason, has a great training camp, and, looks amazing, I mean, he could be a guy that easily goes in the second round. So, yeah, we'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard. You'll be very hard pressed to get him after the fourth round. I can't see him going after the third. I see him being ranked somewhere between second and third round, assuming he's healthy. So we'll see where the pundits have him. Anything more about Kevin Love you want to talk about?
No, just really happy for the guy. I think it's nice to see him get that big deal, and just it'll be really interesting to see him as the number one guy. I guess he was in Minnesota, and he's been playing next to LeBron for all these years. I'm just kind of excited to see what he can do as the lead guy. All right, Neil, I think, there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter about the top of the draft, the guys who should be going off at the top of the draft. We've had a lot of discussions with the listeners about who's number one, who should be number two. In fact, Justin on Twitter @Flipper40 was asking, if we think Davis is hands down the number one, who are we taking number two? So wait, number one, Neil, do you agree that Davis is hands down the number one guy? I know you and Dan were kind of talking about it. You seemed like you did agree that Davis is number one, but it's not so clear cut for you. What do you think? And you just want to touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I'm talking about 8-cat leagues. 9-cat leagues, I think he's definitely number one going away. In 8-category leagues, I think it's a little closer with Harden right on his heels. So I'm not going to say he's definitely number one in terms of if he's healthy. So the only issue you have then is, are you willing to take a guy who could be out for several games based on his history? And that's where it gets kind of curious for me. I know last year he played 75 games, and there's talk that back when he was injured in prior years, maybe he really wasn't terribly injured, but because they weren't going to the playoffs, they decided not to play him as much or shut him down a little bit earlier, and now they're obviously a playoff team. So he could play through some of those things, and he's also an incredibly hardworking guy and a guy who just wants to be out there. So I think if you're okay with the risk of the injury, for sure, he's number one. I don't know, though, if I had number one pick. I would have to think about it. There's a few guys that I really like near the top. So for me, it's not clear cut, but if you told me who is like going into the season most likely to end up number one, I would say Anthony Davis.
So for me, it's definitely Anthony Davis. And, we got some talk on Twitter. VP, one of our friends on Twitter, is saying, are we quickly forgetting the 4 injury-riddled years of Brow? And for me, Neil, I am mega extreme when it comes to avoiding injury-prone players. And I think it says a lot that I'm ready to draft AD. Now, here's the thing, Neil. If a guy can make it through 2 seasons healthy, to me, he's proven that he's worth a shot. Bradley Beal, another guy. I would not touch Bradley Beal before. He's made it through 2 seasons unscathed, healthy, putting up great production. I'm ready to draft Bradley Beal now. So this is kind of my take with Anthony Davis. Yes, he's a walking heart attack. Yes, it will be the most uneasy season for me ever. Every time he goes to the locker room, I'm going to freak out, and it's going to be an up and down roller coaster, but the payoff is huge. He is far and away, if he's healthy, going to be the most productive player in fantasy. We saw his numbers spike when Boogie Cousins went down. Boogie Cousins is gone. Is Anthony Davis's team. It feels like all the moves they made kind of were like compliments to help Anthony Davis. Bringing in Julius Randle, bringing in Elfrid Payton. These guys, these are all compliments to Anthony Davis. I really think he's going to have a huge year as long as he stays healthy. Now, Neil, in the preseason, if he twists his ankle in the preseason, all this is going out of the window for me, man. But as of right now, I'm good with AD. But hey, Neil, to answer Justin's question, who do you like number 2? If we think AD is we're ready to chisel him in as number 1, who do you like for number 2?
All right. So personally, I would take, if I had to make a decision today, I would take Kevin Durant second.
Interesting.
I think if you had to ask me though, who was going to finish 2 in stats, I would say in the 8 category this is again. I think it's Harden who's going to finish second. And the reason why I would not take him second is because I like balance. I like guys who provide balance in all categories. So it allows me to target specialists later on if I need to make up. So I like Kevin Durant. I might even take Kevin Durant 1. It would be close right now if I had to make a decision. And it's just because he does everything so well. Harden field goal percentage can really be a detriment. And then I'm a little worried about Steph Curry. And those are my top 4 guys.
So
maybe Towns and Giannis sneak in there, but right now I'm leaning towards Kevin Durant. I know the Warriors, and this again is a rotisserie. I should probably specify that because if you're in a playoff format of head-to-head, you might see some guys sitting towards the end. And if that's the case, then you'd have to rethink your strategy. But that's my first thought now. Obviously, like you said, an ankle injury could make me throw everything up into the air and change things. But that's where I am today.
So my first 4 guys, very similar to you, Neil, just the order's a little bit different. I got Harden number 2, Durant number 3, and Curry number 4. And, this could flip-flop a little bit up until our draft date. And I could easily end up putting LeBron in there as well. But here's my thinking, Neil. I, like you, love Kevin Durant. I can't believe he added blocks. He was an elite shot blocker this past season, almost 2 blocks a game. Amazing. So I really love that. The only reason why I'm fading Durant a little bit compared to Harden and AD is because I think the Warriors are going to go heavy on the rest. I think down the stretch, especially during our fantasy playoff time, we may see Durant, Curry, Draymond Green, Clay. We may see these guys sit a few games. And so I'm kind of taking that into account. The other thing, too, Boogie's going to miss the beginning of the season, so I think Durant's going to be amazing. A little curious what happens when Boogie gets up to speed and towards the end of the year when Boogie, they really want him to be ready for the playoffs. Boogie is a usage monster. He requires a lot of fantasy usage, and I'm a little worried that that's going to take some away from Durant. So those are the only 2 reasons why I'm fading Durant just a little bit. I still love him, and if I wasn't worried about those 2 things, I would probably have Durant number 1, just like you. But yeah, Harden's the number 2 guy for me, and for me, I really like Harden's outlook. I think he projects to do what he did last season, maybe a little bit more because I think Chris Paul is going to be, he's another season older. He's 33 years old. I think Chris Paul is going to miss some games. I think we're going to see him not play as many minutes. They know the big picture is to try to challenge the Warriors in the playoffs. So they're not going to run Chris Paul into the ground during the regular season. So I really like James Harden's outlook. I think he's number 2. And then for me, Curry's right there at number 4. I think he's going to have a really good year. it wouldn't surprise me if Curry finished number 2. For me, I'm just downgrading him a little bit more compared to Durant and Harden because Curry himself does have some injury concerns with that ankle. We saw in the playoffs he missed some playoff games due to his ankle. And then I also, just the same thing again with them adding Boogie Cousins. I'm curious if it's going to take some away from Curry. So, Neil, any thoughts on my top 4 kind of looking just like yours? Just the order's a little different.
Yeah, a couple things I want to make sure I'm clear about as well. Well, I want to talk about Harden. I'll get to my question at the end with for you, but the Cousins' impact on Durant is something that I have not fully incorporated yet into my projections. I'm not sure how to do that. I don't know how it's going to fully impact him. And in the one category I am nervous about, there are 2 categories, are rebounds, which Durant wasn't a huge rebounder, but he did decently, 6.8 a game, and then blocks. And a lot of Durant's value is from those blocks, as you said. So if Cousins is sort of taking over that role, or more of a rim protector, that could really impact him, and I'm not sure how to project that. So that one is giving me a little bit of pause as I start to think about it. The second thing, I wanted to ask you about Harden. So if you take someone like Harden, first, and you have a high volume shooter with, shooting, what did he do last year? He shot 44%, but not bad, but on 20 shots. Do you ever punt a category in 8-cat? Like, would you then try to build your team around not caring about field goal percentage, or do you just are you consciously trying to make it up as you go through the rest of your draft? That's what really throws me off. If I take a guy in the first or second round that has a weakness in one category, I'm constantly trying to rebalance that with the rest of my roster, and that kind of hamstrings me in how I pick. So that's why I try not to do that in the first couple of rounds. Does that make sense? And what do you do if you take a guy like Harden?
I never try to punt any categories when it comes to a roto league. I do think that it's a good strategy to punt one category in a head-to-head league, but in a roto league, I don't. Now, Neil, last year I won my home league and I finished 3rd last in free throw percentage. So it's possible to not do well in a category and still win your roto league. I was so dominant in other categories that I was able to absorb that hit. So, if you do draft Harden with your early pick, you should kind of, for the rest of your draft, get guys that help you in his deficiencies, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It just sometimes makes it hard for me because then I'm really then at that point avoiding guys that are not good shooters, and that can really sort of, I can't even get the word right, but that can really change how I draft because I'm so cognizant of that. And sometimes I'll make mistakes because of that. I'll take someone who isn't as good on my draft board because I'm really worried about making sure my field goal percent is solid. And so that's kind of why I avoid it. It's really more to give me more options as I go through the draft, even if I'm taking someone who I know is probably not going to be number 1, and I take them, or like, let's say I think Durant's going to be like 3rd or 4th. I would still probably take him 1st or 2nd just because of that. Although, if I hear Anthony Davis is fully healthy, maybe I would lean towards that because he is so much head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of categories. So, but hopefully my logic makes some sense. I don't really have any other issues with your top 4. I think LeBron is so hard to predict this year. Oh gosh, he had such a great year last year, right? And he had 37 minutes. I can't imagine playing that many minutes again. He certainly could do similar stats though. And his free throw percent was so great last year compared to his, historically. He was at 73%. And I see him as a guy who continues to work on his game. So I don't think that's an anomaly. I think that could be where it is or even get better. What do you,
Neil,
go ahead.
So I think we need to talk about a group of guys that are just outside that top 4. And you can make an argument for any of these guys jumping into this top 4. So you mentioned LeBron James. Career year last year, actually finished as the number 2 player in 8 category leagues. So, but I having a conversation with Dan, his thinking was that Cleveland wanted to win so badly that they rode LeBron hard. And he doesn't see that happening with the Lakers. I don't think, there's not as much of an urgency with the Lakers as there was with Cleveland to make the playoffs, to get to the finals. So I think Dan's thinking is that LeBron's not going to be ridden so hard this season. And I think that's why Dan's kind of downgrading him just a little bit. Neil, when you get onto a new team, you're in a new city, you kind of feel a little rejuvenated. You kind of feel like you got something to prove. I think LeBron's going to want to show that, hey, I don't know. I think he's going to want to show off a little bit. So I can actually see LeBron having a really good season. And, we know the Lakers, they're a young team. They've got that band of misfits with Rondo and Beasley and stuff. And I just feel like LeBron is just going to be the number one guy. He's going to take charge. He's going to run that show. I can see him doing a little bit of everything. I would not be surprised if LeBron finishes as the number 2 or if he finishes anywhere in this top 4. I got no problem if anybody wants to put LeBron in that group. But for me, he's just out of there. And then another guy I think we need to talk about is Karl Anthony Towns. Can easily also see this guy being in the top 4. Finished as the number 4 player last season in 8 category leagues. We don't have to worry about his role. Tibbs rides his guys hard. We know he's going to get upper 30 minutes a game. And I don't think we've seen the best of Karl Anthony Towns. I think his ceiling, we haven't seen his ceiling yet. So I'm a little curious if this guy can take a couple steps forward and we see more improvement from him. Can easily see him finishing in the top 4. And then one last guy I want to mention, Giannis. I think this guy, I don't think we put him in this group, and I think the one thing missing from his game is that drop-dead three-point shot. He needs to add that three-point shot to his repertoire, and then I think he'll be considered in this very top tier. And, Neil, we got a question from one of our listeners on Twitter. Ben Lumsden wants to know, do we have any concern over Giannis's knee? So, Neil, just real quick, I know I just gave you a lot right there. What are your thoughts on that next group of guys? Do you got any concerns about Giannis's knee?
I don't know enough about to really say either way. I wasn't really certain what's been coming out of Milwaukee, so I don't know. I'm not worried about now, but because I haven't heard anything major. I think if there was something major, I would have heard about it. So I'm not. If he was just dinged up throughout the year, that wouldn't bother me. It sounds pretty normal for a basketball player to have that issue, unless it's something more serious. I just want to clarify really quickly. When you were doing your rankings, saying LeBron was second, that's totals versus averages.
Yes.
And just to clarify, just not for any other reason, because I look at averages, and so it's a little bit different in the rankings. But yes, you're right. He was second in totals. So no, Giannis not worried about his knee as much as I am worried about, like you said, a 3-point shooting. That's why I would avoid taking him in the top. I don't know. Maybe I would take him 4th, but certainly probably not top 3. And then just to get back LeBron really quickly. I know what you said. I agree with you that he's going to want to come out and really play well. I just think his minutes will come down, and I think they've got guys around him who can distribute a little bit better. So his assists may come down, and then his rebounds may come down too, because he may not want to, do so much on the defensive end. So I don't know in terms of just going for the rebound all the time. So I'm worried about those 2 categories, so the assists and the rebounds. The other categories I think will be just fine. So that's why I think he might drop just a little bit and play. His minutes may go down from 37 to maybe 35, 34, something more reasonable. Although I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that either. He's such an incredible athlete. Maybe he'll still want to play that many minutes. Was there more that you threw at me, or was that it? Have I covered enough?
I think that's it. And, I just want to touch a little bit on Giannis's knee. I'm not too concerned
Okay.
about it. He had, going into last season, I believe he had like a PRP injection. He was suffering from some knee tendonitis. He did get some maintenance rest days. I think like he missed 2 games, I want to say off the top of my head, throughout the season. Doesn't sound like anything serious. And I'm sure that they're managing it in the off season, and I'm sure that they're going to have a plan for him, and they're going to just watch it closely. But doesn't sound like anything serious. He didn't need surgery. Heck, it didn't really slow him down too much last season. He looked great, and I think it'll be even less of an issue this season. So I'm not worried about Giannis's knee at all. That's not a reason why I even downgrade him. For me, it's just his game's just missing one more thing that those other guys have. And to me, it's that 3-point shot. If he can get a consistent 3-point shot, I would gladly put him up in that group, that group of guys that we were just talking about. And then real quick, just to round out my top 10, the guys at the very end, I think Damian Lillard's going to be great. You got to still have Russell Westbrook somewhere in there. Nikola Jokic. I think the very end of the first round, we could see guys like Victor Oladipo go off. I don't know, maybe Paul George or Joel Embiid. What are your thoughts for like the end of the first round, or those guys in that 10 range, Neil?
Yeah, so just going through again, Davis, Harden, Curry, Durant, James, Towns, and I'll just say Giannis, his first name. So after that, I would probably go Jokic, and then Westbrook. Those are probably my next two. Lillard, I know, finished higher than both of them last year, and Oladipo did too. I just see a slight regression for Oladipo from last year, and as great as he was, and I expect him to be as good as a reality player as he was last year. I just see his numbers coming down just a tad bit. And then Lillard, I'm just not sure he can keep up 36 and a half minutes a game again this year. That's why I think he might come down a bit. So, well, Westbrook, I think will go crazy again. And if you're in 8 category, then the turnovers are fine. And Jokic, I think is going to have another great season across the board in all categories. So that's where I would go top 10.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I agree with your take on Victor Oladipo. I kind of wonder if we're going to see him take a step back this year. I really like the moves that the Pacers made from a reality standpoint, keeping Thaddeus Young, bringing in a guy like Tyreek Evans. So I think that from a reality standpoint, they made improvements, but from a fantasy standpoint, I wonder if Victor Oladipo's just, we're going to see a little bit of his usage go down just a little, and his numbers are going to be slightly less than what they were last season. But I do still love Victor Oladipo. I'll be happy if he's on any of my teams, but you definitely can't put him high in that first round. It's definitely like an end of the first round, beginning of second round type of a guy. And then I agree with you on Russell Westbrook. Should be great. I hate the I probably won't be targeting him just because of the turnovers. I know for 8 cats that's okay, but also his field goal percentage hurts you bad. He shoots a lot, so real bog on your field goal percentage, but great everywhere else. And then I really like Damian Lillard. I'd be happy to have him on all my teams. I think he's going to be great, and Jokic should be great as well. Now, Denver made a lot of they got a lot of mouths to feed on that team. Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton. They added Isaiah Thomas, who shoots a lot. Paul Millsap. So I'm a little worried that Jokic scoring-wise isn't going to be on the same level as these other guys that we're talking about. All these other guys that we're talking about, Neil, they're like the alpha number 1 scorers on their team, where I think Jokic, we know he loves to pass. I love the assists that he gives. Love getting those assist numbers from your big guy. But for me, I wish his scoring, I wish he was more of that alpha killer type guy. And so that's why I kind of have him at the end of the first round instead of any higher than that. But I definitely agree with you. All right, Neil, that's kind of the top of the draft, our first round. Any closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, for Jokic, I just want to say I think he's still, he's still so young and getting better, and I think he's still learning how to be more aggressive in this league. There are these stories where he, a couple of seasons ago, volunteered not to start, and that's kind of like his personality. And you're right, I wish he was a little more demanding of the ball, but I think that's going to come in time as he ages a little bit, and maybe that'll happen this year. At least that's my thinking around that. That's really it, though, for the top 10. I think we got 10 in there. Is there anyone you would take? Like, is there, like, we didn't talk about Embiid. Would you put him perhaps in the top 10, or would you think
He falls.
someone else might jump in there? Kyrie Irving maybe jumps up there.
For me, Embiid is just out of that first round. I think he's a good second round guy. Other guys you could put in there, but I think Paul George will be right there. Trying to think who else is like a clear guy. That's about it. I do really like Joel Embiid this year. He was a guy that I was kind of had as a do not draft guy because I was so concerned of his injuries, but he looked really good last season, and if he looks really great in the preseason, I'm ready to take that guy pretty early, but definitely not in the top 10. Definitely not in the first round. All right, Neil, I think that was a good show. We got into the top of the draft and did our top 10, our first round. I think later let's do some other shows about who we like in the middle rounds. I'm putting together a list of sleepers, late round guys that I think could put up mid round value. I can't wait to go over this list with you, Neil. I'm going to be gone after today, so any big plans for the weekend? What do you got?
I'm going out of town myself. Going to go up to Wisconsin, a nice idyllic town on a lake, so that should be fun. I won't be. I'm not a nature guy like you. I'm not going to be camping though. I need like indoor plumbing, and air conditioning.
Jet setting again, and
yes, exactly. I'm going to be in a town of like 1,000 people. So.
Well, you know what? I feel a little camping is I'm going to be staying in a trailer. So it's not it's probably more like glamping than it is camping. I'm not going to be roughing it too hard. And the place I'm staying at, it's like near the San Diego area. I've never been there, but from what I hear, it's kind of like a resort campground, meaning they've got like swimming pools and horseshoes, and they've got I think there's like an on-site bar and stuff like that. So trust me, Neil, I am not going to be roughing it, man.
Yeah, that's more my style of camping. I wish I was. I love hiking. I like being outdoors, but then I like to come back to my own bed and get in a shower in. So,
all right.
Anyway, have a great time out there. I know it's gorgeous down. I haven't been to San Diego. I've been to Southern California a few times, but not all the way down there. And I hope you guys have a great trip.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. You guys, don't forget to hit Neil and I up on Twitter, @BallWithNeil. I'm @Adrian Benjamins. Hit us up. We want to do more listener questions on future shows. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a great week.
All right, man.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.